The evening of April 20th, 2010, began like countless others aboard the Deepwater Horizon, one of the world's most advanced offshore drilling rigs. Floating more than 40 miles off the coast of Louisiana, the massive platform was nearing the end of a complex drilling operation that had taken weeks to complete. For the 126 men working on board, it was supposed to be another routine day before returning home to their families. As the sun disappeared beneath the horizon, few suspected that hidden thousands of meters below the seabed, enormous pressure was building beyond anyone's control. Then, without warning, a violent explosion ripped through the rig, followed by towering fireballs that illuminated the night sky. Within minutes, the Deepwater Horizon was engulfed in flames, triggering one of the worst environmental disasters in modern history. But how could one of the most technologically advanced drilling platforms on Earth suffer such a catastrophic failure? The Deepwater Horizon was more than just an offshore drilling rig. Built to operate in some of the most challenging environments on Earth, it represented the cutting edge of deepwater drilling technology. Owned by Transocean and leased by BP, the semi-submersible platform had earned a reputation for its advanced equipment and strong safety record. By the spring of 2010, the rig was completing work on the Macondo prospect, an exploratory oil well located approximately 41 miles off the coast of Louisiana in the Gulf of Mexico. The project had already fallen weeks behind schedule, adding significant financial pressure as every additional day of drilling cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Nearly 5,000 feet beneath the ocean's surface, engineers had drilled more than 18,000 feet into the seabed in search of oil trapped under immense pressure. Controlling that pressure required a delicate balance. Heavy drilling mud filled the well, providing enough weight to prevent oil and natural gas from rushing upward. As long as the pressure inside the well remained under control, the operation could proceed safely. If that balance was lost, however, the consequences could be catastrophic. On April 20th, the crew prepared for one of the final stages of the project. Their objective was to temporarily seal the well before the drilling rig departed, allowing another platform to return later and begin production. To accomplish this, workers pumped cement into the lower section of the well to create a barrier between the underground oil reservoir and the wellbore. Halliburton, the company responsible for the cementing operation, completed the work, and attention soon turned to testing whether the seal could withstand the enormous pressure beneath the seabed. The pressure tests produced results that should have raised immediate concern. Some readings suggested that hydrocarbons were entering the well, indicating that the cement barrier might not have formed a proper seal. Instead of treating the abnormal data as evidence of a potentially dangerous failure, the results were interpreted as acceptable by key decision-makers on board. Investigators would later conclude that several warning signs were either misunderstood, misinterpreted, or dismissed altogether. Believing the well to be secure, the crew began replacing the heavy drilling mud inside the well with much lighter seawater. This procedure significantly reduced the pressure holding back the oil and natural gas trapped below. Unknown to those on the rig, the cement barrier had failed to isolate the reservoir completely. As the heavy mud was removed, highly pressurized hydrocarbons forced their way into the wellbore and began rising rapidly toward the surface. At first, the warning signs appeared subtle. Pressure readings fluctuated unexpectedly, and small amounts of drilling fluid behaved in ways that experienced crew members recognized as unusual. Within moments, however, the situation escalated dramatically. Natural gas surged through the well at tremendous speed, overwhelming the rig's control systems before the crew could regain control. Mud and seawater erupted onto the drilling floor as alarms sounded across the platform. Workers immediately attempted to activate emergency procedures. One of the most critical safety devices on the rig was the blowout preventer, a massive stack of hydraulic valves installed on the seabed. Designed as the final line of defense, the blowout preventer was supposed to seal the well completely if all other control measures failed. But when the emergency systems were activated, the device failed to stop the uncontrolled flow of hydrocarbons. Later investigations would reveal multiple mechanical and hydraulic problems that prevented it from functioning as intended during the emergency. As enormous volumes of natural gas escaped from the well, they rose rapidly through the drilling riser and spread across the rig. Within seconds, the gas reached the engine rooms and other enclosed spaces. When it encountered an ignition source, a devastating explosion tore through the Deepwater Horizon. The blast shook the massive platform with incredible force, throwing workers from their feet and sending debris flying in every direction. Moments later, a second explosion erupted, followed by towering flames that quickly engulfed the rig. The explosions instantly destroyed communication systems, damaged critical equipment, and cut off escape routes. Thick black smoke poured into the night sky as intense heat spread across the platform. Crew members fought desperately to help injured colleagues, while others searched through smoke-filled corridors for a way to reach the lifeboats. Despite the chaos, many workers displayed extraordinary courage, risking their own lives to assist others before abandoning the burning rig. Rescue vessels stationed nearby responded immediately after receiving distress calls. Survivors jumped from heights of more than 100 feet into the dark waters of the Gulf of Mexico to escape the flames. Rescue crews pulled dozens of exhausted workers from the sea while helicopters transported the injured to hospitals along the Louisiana coast. By the time the evacuation was complete, 115 people had survived the disaster. 11 crew members, however, were missing and were later presumed dead after an extensive search failed to locate them. Although the human tragedy was already immense, an even greater disaster was only beginning. 2 days after the explosion, the Deepwater Horizon, still burning uncontrollably, finally capsized and sank beneath the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. As the rig disappeared beneath the surface, the damaged well continued releasing vast quantities of crude oil from the seafloor nearly a mile below. What had begun as an industrial accident was about to become the largest marine oil spill in the history of the petroleum industry, with environmental and economic consequences that would be felt for years to come. The investigation that followed the Challenger disaster lasted for months and uncovered a truth that was as devastating as the accident itself. Investigators concluded that the tragedy had not been caused by an unpredictable mechanical failure or an unforeseeable event. Instead, it resulted from a combination of known technical risks, management pressure, flawed decision-making, and communication failures. The Rogers Commission determined that the primary cause of the accident was the failure of the rubber O-rings in the right solid rocket booster, which had become too stiff to seal properly in the unusually cold temperatures on the morning of the launch. Engineers had repeatedly warned that the seals might not perform safely under such conditions, but those warnings were ultimately overshadowed by schedule demands and an organizational culture that had gradually become comfortable accepting risks that should never have been considered routine. The findings forced NASA to confront problems that extended far beyond a single faulty component. The investigation revealed weaknesses in the agency's decision-making process, where critical engineering concerns were not always given the attention they deserved. Communication between technical experts and senior managers had broken down, allowing uncertainty to be interpreted as acceptable risk rather than a reason to delay the mission. In response, NASA undertook one of the most significant safety reforms in its history. The solid rocket boosters were completely redesigned, launch procedures became far more rigorous, and engineers were given greater authority to halt a mission whenever serious safety concerns arose. The agency also introduced organizational changes intended to ensure that technical evidence would always take priority over schedule pressures or public expectations. More than 3 decades later, the Challenger disaster remains one of the defining moments in the history of space exploration. The loss of 7 courageous crew members profoundly changed the way human spaceflight is planned, evaluated, and executed. Every mission launched since then has benefited from the painful lessons learned on that cold January morning in 1986. The tragedy serves as a lasting reminder that even the most advanced technology can never eliminate the consequences of human decisions. In exploration, as in every field where lives depend on precision and trust, true safety is built through careful engineering, open communication, and the courage to stop when something does not feel right. Challenger's legacy is therefore measured not only by the mission that was lost, but by the countless lives that have been protected, because its lessons were never forgotten.